city of Karachi. It doesn't go much outside the city. It specifically focuses on Karachi, Pakistan, um, as well as kind of exploring kind of the modern dynamics of the city. So, if you don't know, Karachi as a city was really a fairly minor fishing settlement up until the British Raj made it the main seaport for the Indus River area. Um, and there was some population, but up until the partition of India in 1947, I want to say, it was really a relatively minor seaport. But with the split of Pakistan and India, whole huge numbers of Indian Muslims, Pakistan being established as a Islamic state, either depending on who you ask, either just in name or actually via Sharia law. But a huge number of Indian Muslims who wanted to get away from Hindu-dominated India moved to Pakistan, and the primary city or the main city that they moved to was Karachi. And actually, the reason the book is called Instant City is because of how quickly the city grew post 1947 to current. Really one of the fastest growing cities on earth, to the point that now Karachi is, I believe, either top 10 or definitely top 20 largest cities in the entire world. So Steve looks at kind of some varying aspects of the city. He, of course, mentions Jinnah, who was sort of the father of Pakistan, who helped lead the Muslim League to establish an independent territory. He talks about the effect that the split from Bangladesh of East Pakistan, i.e. Bangladesh, had from the rest of Pakistan, and particularly the second wave of immigrants that came from Bengali, Bangladesh, to the region. He talks about, looking at the maps here, that's some of the history. He also talks about some of the important landmarks, such as some of the important shrines that exist in the city. He talks about both Shia and Sunni shrines, as well as Jinnah's tomb, which is a prominent landmark. He talks about some of the boondoggled, what you would call suburbanization of Karachi, or at least planned suburbanization, in areas that have largely become slums. The inner part of Karachi, like the Clifton area, and the far west of Karachi along Paris Beach and Hawke's Bay, kind of the wealthy areas, but that's not where the majority of people live. Matter of fact, the gap between rich and poor in Karachi is one of the worst in the entire world. So what was done with this via Jinnah, or not so much Jinnah, but I think it's Abya, A-B-A-Y, who was a military general and was actually one of the people responsible for moving the capital out of Karachi, Karachi being the capital of Pakistan, from its founding in 1947 to, I believe, the mid-1970s, when Islamabad was, the planned city of Islamabad was declared the new capital. But in addition to the general in a coup, Abia, I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, planned the new city of Islamabad. He also planned all these suburbs, brought in a Greek, I believe, city planner, and it was really a instance of the best laid plans of mice and men sometimes go astray, because they really thought of every modern convenience, but just because of the demographics of the city were so overwhelming and the impoverishment of the city was so overwhelming, the suburbs didn't work out. They worked out in the sense that people eventually lived there and live there to this day, but largely run down, much more tightly populated, and to the point that nowadays, or kind of modern Pakistan, or Karachi, has something that no city wants, in that land is being developed by developers, for poor residents without any permits, and sometimes even without the land being bought that they're on. It's like publicly controlled land, and because the city of Karachi and the Pakistani government just has so little central control, at least in this area. Now they have large central control when it comes to the military, but sort of when it comes to the social progress of the social planning of their cities, you have these wildcat developers that are just kind of running amok, and unfortunately, kind of the poor residents become kind of trapped to the whims of these people, these developers, in that because the city doesn't know about it, or because they just don't have the power to, more so they don't have the power to deal with it, like things like running electricity, running water, are kind of either developed by or cornered by the developers or by co-ops in these sort of illegal communities. Let's see. He of course talked about the casino in one of the there was this casino that was supposed to be built in the Clifton area, one of the wealthier neighborhoods, of course. Pakistan being an Islamic state, being what it has over time become a more and more Sharia law state, so not just a state that has Muslims, but where the law is actually determined by the Quran. There was thought early on that this casino could work when it was a little bit more of an open country, but went by the wayside. And now actually the land that the big casino that was going to be this big kind of gym in the Crown Gym in the downtown development, or the inner city development area of Karachi, has now become a Abu Dhabi, Dubai type high-rise complex that unfortunately they're having trouble filling. Let's see, what else? Well, I guess the other thing this is this book is kind of featured around, that was the start of the focus of Karachi, was terrorism. Specifically the 2009 bombing of, I want to say, the Promenade area on Jinnah Road. And there was a lot of controversy about this, about who really took responsibility. Was it the Pashtuns, who are not Indians but are actually more Afghani, a very slim minority in the city, but who have more fundamentalist points of view? How much was the government involved in this? Most people think that the government was actually involved in the explosion, but did they know about it? And also there were numerous shops that were burned down in the center part of the city along Jinnah Road, which is like the main, Jinnah being named after the founder of the entire country of Pakistan, that runs from the airport to the downtown region. It's like the main thoroughfare through the city. So yeah, there was the bombing, and you know, something that was mentioned by the author was just how little this was mentioned in the West. I think because, you know, most people think of the Mumbai bombings, or they think of you know, the London bombings, or of course 9/11 in New York and the United States, in that it's primarily this Muslim bloc attacking this other Muslim bloc. But the truth of the matter is while that certainly happens, and while non-Muslims are viewed as infidels, there's also a large sort of Muslim, even though it's explicitly outlawed in the Quran, there is large Muslim on Muslim violence, specifically by more fundamentalist Muslims bombing or attacking or committing acts of terror on Muslims that, for the most part, most of us would think are more moderate, are actually better for society, just in their practicality, but who are viewed as usurpers or infiltrators by the fundamentalist Muslims. Of course, there's an element of the Shia-Sunni split in this. Pakistan being a primarily Sunni state, but having large influences from Iran. There's also the Sunni, Shia, and Sufi minority, which is sort of a mystical minority, which Pakistan being sort of the border between very mystical, multi-god Hinduism and sort of the strict Islamic State, is kind of a compromise that developed during the Mughal times between the two. Yeah, so what else we got? Shrine and Temple, we got the casino. Oh, emergency numbers. So during this bombing, one of the prominent figures that they mentioned in the book, and I'm sure there are many prominent figures in Karachi, but one that was specifically mentioned was Enhi, I believe it's Enhi. And they just mentioned him because not only is he a prominent businessman, but he's also made his livelihood to a large degree charitable, but not completely charitable, in emergency services, so like ambulance type business or fire truck, that kind of thing. And what was mentioned was that once again, the city does not have the capacity to have its own perform these tasks. I mean, Karachi is almost laissez-faire, not by choice but by necessity, just because the city has so little central control that things that are often in the West thought of just fundamentally as basic community or city areas of responsibility fall to private people, not out of any sort of like, in the West we call like Republican cynicism, but just because out of necessity, because there's no one else there to fill the void. That being said, this Enhi is considered very philanthropic, very diplomatic. I mean, he certainly had more of an opportunity to self-enrich to enrich himself than he has. It's actually mentioned in the book that he lives in this little tiny apartment. His wife is always complaining about how they need to upgrade from the really old car they have to a more modern car. He actually, Steve Inskeep does an interview with this guy. He's like 80 some odd now. And basically I get the impression that he's kind of an old curmudgeon, like a CEO old curmudgeon type, but not curmudgeon in cynically making money, but in curmudgeon in that he's going to protect what he sees as a vital service to the city, despite whatever political wanderings there are in the city. So it's kind of I don't know. The guy is sort of a beacon of light in a city that's largely chaotic and overrun by overpopulation, terrorism, all that kind of stuff. Let's see. I think he also talks about the sort of the politics of the city. The three main political parties being the PPP, which Benazir Bhutto, and the father, I think it's like Azim Bhutto. That's a father-daughter political dynasty who really had power over the entire country, but obviously because Karachi is one of the main, political hubs in Pakistan, had large influence there. They are largely concerned with. It's sort of ironic because, they're largely were founded as sort of a communist party, but kind of people socialist, not quite communist, but people socialist type party. But because they were established 30 or 40 years ago, have kind of gained a reputation for being entrenched in power. Now they're certainly thought of as a more progressive wing than Musharraf, who is the current president of the country, and is actually not mentioned that much in this book because Musharraf's main political center is in the middle of Pakistan, Islamabad, Lahore, Punjab region. So he's not mentioned that much, but PPP, Benazir Bhutto's party, MQM, which is actually a party primarily based, at least had its initial foundings in people that moved from India to Muslims that moved from India to Pakistan. Now you'd think they're all Muslims that get along, but there's actually really large cultural clashes between Indian Muslims who migrated and sort of the native peoples, the Sindh, which is the region that Karachi is in, And actually the Sind, I think it's Sindh, or Cindy. I think sometimes it can include I. But anyway, they were kind of angry with this huge influx of people because demographically they just got overwhelmed. These are people that have lived in this region for years and years and years and years and years, but kind of were quite angry by that. They also have a very strong political party. And there's obviously the Pashtuns from the north who commit a lot of terrorism. They come down from not really Afghanistan, kind of the Afghanistan-Pakistan border, kind of the tribal regions area. Some of them come down for work because there's no work up there. Karachi, a big, large city, even if it's menial work, they can find work there. But at other times, come down to kind of spread some fundamentalist thought within the city. Well, let's see. How's the book end? I believe we talked about the casino. But I think it ends with the second to last thing is Dream World. I haven't really talked about sort of the rich in Karachi. I did talk about the casino and the kind of Dubai type buildings they're building around, but there's really, in any time you have large amounts of poverty, you have large amounts of exploitatable labor, and you also just have some sort of economy that's going to build, and because of that you have people that are very rich. So one of the last places it goes towards the end of the book is ironically a water park, which has become one of the huge kind of attractions for the well-to-do and you would think that, like water park from a Western perspective would be a place for only well-to-do, but you got to remember how impoverished most of the people in the city are, that they can't even afford to go to a water park. That being said, this water park is on top of a big hill, huge slides, very sort of the exact opposite of kind of, well, not the exact opposite, but at least mentally what you're thinking is sort of quite different from Sharia law, conservative country. There was also one place in the book they got some alcohol in, but that was just like a little backroom shop. That didn't have anything to do with the well-to-do. So yeah, he goes in the water park and doesn't really talk about too much other than that there's just a day of kind of doing the wave pool, doing the slides, little sun and a little water fun, basically like Schlitterbahn or Oceans of Fun here in the United States, if you're from the Missouri area. And then he ends with renewed Karachi. He ends up with this scene about these boys in these alleys. They catch birds, and then for a fee they let them go. And he asked why someone that did this, why they pay these boys to let these birds go when they're just going to capture them again, or capture another bird, and there's really no fundamental kind of economic value there. And he sort of relates it to kind of the spirit of Pakistan and the spirit of Karachi, really. A city that is constantly being trapped, but there's always, the horizon on the future, and even though it's freedom in Islamic shading, that there is hope in the city, that it isn't just everything you see on CNN or the Western news where it's complete terrible all the time. There is a dynamic to the city. There is a feeling within the city that there's good and bad, that people move on, that during the bombing people rebuilt those shops, that people who are very poor can go to the beach or go to their shrines and temples and find meaning. It really does sort of encapture the encaged bird and the bird out of its cage, the feeling of liberation, which, if not actualized, most people in the city are striving towards, even in their somewhat oppressed circumstances. So anyway, Instant City, I've been going on for 20 minutes. Instant City, Life and Death in Karachi. All right, read up, you guys. Bye.